All right, so 12:15, we'll get started. Good luck, everyone. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to our information session today for the postgraduate certificate of People Analytics for HR professionals for our fall 2026 term. My name is Mushur Chaudhry, and I'm the manager of recruitment and sales for the Chang School. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the land on which Toronto Metropolitan University is built upon. Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. I thank the Indigenous people of Turtle Island for their efforts to protect the land, and I deeply regret the past injustices they have endured. As Toronto Metropolitan University seeks to move forward in partnership with Indigenous people, I pledge to foster an environment that is more inclusive and welcoming of Indigenous people from all communities. Now, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's session. Your microphone is muted throughout the event so as not to disturb other attendees or the presenters. For the hearing impaired, we have automated captioning available, which you can access by activating it in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. And you can submit your questions at any time by typing them into that question box. We'll collect them throughout the session and address them at the end of the presentation. Now I'd like to introduce our panel today. First, from the Chang School, we have Marla Mazer, Program Manager of Continuing Education. We also have Dr. Aubrey Wilson, Program Director of Continuing Education at the Chang School. Then we have Ilya Mayor, Instructor, Course Reviewer, Curriculum Committee Member, and Program Advisory Lead with the Chang School. Daniel Spadafora, Program Framework Developer, Curriculum Committee Member, Course Developer, and also Instructor here at the Chang School. And finally, we have Majabin Mehtab, HR Generalist at CI Financial and a graduate of the certificate. Now, before we dive into our presentation, I'd like to do a quick poll just to check the temperature of the room. And if you can take just a couple of seconds to answer our poll here, what motivated you most to consider this certificate? And we have a few options here: career advancement, career change, skill building for current role, personal interest, and other. And then for the second question is what is your current level of familiarity with the certificate? And you have high, moderate, and low. So yeah, if you can just take a couple of seconds to answer these questions, it really helps us provide some feedback to our team and also to our panel here today. We'll leave that on for just a couple of more seconds, and then we'll share the results shortly. But once again, welcome. Thank you for joining our session today, and we're looking forward to a really good session with you all. All right, so here are the results. Career advancement and skill building for current role are the top choices for the first question, with career change and personal interest right behind. And then we have an even split between low and moderate. So, some people who have basic awareness of the program, and then a few people who have minimal or no prior knowledge, which is fine because that's what we're here for. So now I'll invite our program manager, Marla Mazer, to go over a brief overview of the certificate. Welcome, Marla.
Great, thank you. And welcome everyone, and thank you for taking the time to connect with us and learn more about the postgraduate certificate in People Analytics for HR professionals at Toronto Metropolitan University's G. Raymond Chang School of Continuing Education. This program is designed for professionals who want to strengthen their ability to use workforce data to understand what is happening, identify meaningful patterns, and support stronger people, business decisions. My name is Marla Mazer, and I'm a program manager at the Chang School, and I'm happy to guide you through this exciting opportunity that can enhance your career prospects and professional skills. So over the next few slides, I'll walk you through some of the most important program details. And as we go through the information, please don't hesitate to pop your questions in the chat. After my presentation, you'll have the opportunity to meet some of the experts involved in the development and instruction of these programs. So please feel free to submit questions you may have for our experts at any time, and we'll get to them at the end of after my presentation. So let's get started with a quick overview of what we're going to cover. Today, we'll focus on the information we hear prospective learners asking us most often. So we'll begin with how the programs are structured, including delivery time, commitment, and cost. Then we'll talk about who these programs are designed for and what you'll learn in each pathway. Next, we'll look at some of the career opportunities these skills can support, walk through the admissions and application process, and talk about the broader benefits available to you as a Chang School and TMU learner. And finally, we'll show you how to take the next step if this program feels like the right fit for you. So what does the program actually look like? And next slide. Great. So this certificate has been designed specifically with working professionals in mind. The program is fully online with weekly live sessions that give you opportunities to engage directly with your instructors and your peers. The learning is also practical and project-based. The intention is for you to build analytical skills in a supportive environment and then apply those skills directly to HR and workforce questions in your day-to-day work. The certificate has four 13-week courses, and learners should plan for approximately 5 to 8 hours of work each week, including the live sessions, reading, assignments, and project work. Most learners complete the certificate in approximately 1 to 1.5 years, and there's flexibility in how you would pace the program. So if time is a consideration, I'd encourage you to think less about whether you can fit 4 courses into your schedule across the next 1 to 2 years, and more about whether you can realistically carve out 5 to 8 hours during the weeks you're enrolled in one course. So that tends to be a more useful way to assess the time commitment. And the total program investment is listed on the slide, and bursary opportunities are available. So please feel free to ask an advisor about those options. So who did we have in mind when we designed this program? This program is designed for professionals coming to people analytics from a few different directions. You may already be working in HR and want to strengthen your analytical capability so you can make better use of workforce data and improve HR processes. You may be looking to enter HR with a particular interest in data-informed decision-making, or you may already have a background in data analytics and want to better understand the HR context so that your analysis is more closely connected to people and organizational goals. So the common thread is really the intersection of people, data, and decision-making. You don't necessarily need to see yourself as a data scientist. The goal is to build the analytical confidence and practical skills to ask better questions of HR data, interpret what it is telling you, and communicate those insights effectively. And that becomes clear when we look at what you will actually learn to do. So, next slide. First, you'll learn how to communicate with data. Having the numbers is only part of the job. You'll need to be able to present them in a way that helps other people understand what they mean. You'll build skills in data visualization and communicating insights effectively. You'll also explore data ethics, including the legal and ethical considerations involved in collecting, analyzing, and interpreting employee information. That's especially important when you're working with sensitive people data. And then you'll build your understanding of the statistical techniques to identify patterns in employee data and support a more forward-looking workforce decisions. And finally, you'll look at how to connect people and analytics to business goals. The aim is to move beyond reporting metrics and use data to help HR contribute more strategically to organizational decision making. And taken together, these capabilities help you to use workforce data with greater confidence to communicate clearly, identify patterns, support decisions, and strengthen HR's strategic contribution. So if that sounds like the kind of capability you're looking to build, let's talk about what you need to do in order to apply. The application process is quite straightforward, but what I want to spend I want to spend a moment on the admission criteria, because we know that prospective learners often have questions about this. Applicants would normally have an undergraduate degree, although we can also consider a combination of equivalent professional experience and education. And to apply, you'll prepare an up-to-date resume that highlights your most relevant experience and education, complete the online application, upload your resume, and submit. And we usually follow up within about 2 business days. If you're looking at the admissions criteria and wondering whether your education or professional background makes you a good fit, please don't hesitate to please don't rule yourself out. And that's a type of question that our advising team can help you work through. So as a learner in the Chang School Certificate Program, you have access to an array of resources and that support and complement your learning journey. You'll have access to career and academic advising, including resume support, interview coaching, and insights into trends affecting HR and people analytics. You'll also have opportunities to build connections with peers and industry through Chang School events and networking opportunities. You'll be developing practical analytical tools and approaches throughout the program so that you can continue applying to workforce and HR questions after the certificate is complete. And beyond the classroom, you'll have access to TMU resources, including the university library and digital learning tools, as well as financial support options such as bursaries and scholarships. So while earning the credential is important, we want the overall experience to strengthen your analytical capability, your professional work, and your confidence in using data within an HR context. And if you're thinking this sounds like the next step I've been looking for, here's what you can do. If you'd like to move forward, there's a few options. We encourage you to visit the Chang School website and learn more about the certificate and the courses, and then begin your application. If you still have questions, particularly about whether your education or professional experience makes you a good fit, please connect with us. Our advising team can help answer questions about eligibility, the program itself, or other career pathways that you may be considering. So thank you very much for spending some time with us today and considering People Analytics for HR Professionals Postgraduate Certificate. And with that, I will turn it back to Mashur.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Marla, for sharing that overview. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Ilya Mayor, instructor, course reviewer, and curriculum committee member and program advisory lead. And he's also the director of operations and people at Clue Digital to speak for a few minutes about his journey into the sector.
Thanks for sure, and good to see everybody on the panel. And I hope this is going to be a good session for those attending. So yeah, I mean, my journey is it was an interesting one. I have like everybody else, I suppose, in this field, this kind of started in other places, but I've worked in implementations in terms of HR technology. I've worked in professional services, research and advisory. I've done specific work around people analytics, leading a team for a very large municipality, and now I'm working in the operations and people, leading 2 organizations in the digital advertising space. I also have the pleasure of teaching 2 of the classes. I've been the instructor for the second class, Data Foundations, and the third class, Data Management and Visualization, and the third class, which is the Introduction to Statistical Analysis for HR professionals. And I have to say that, you know, over the years, even as we've been teaching this course, things have changed in the field. So and the program has evolved with that. So pretty excited to be here and happy to answer any questions students might have.
All of that. Thank you so much for sharing that little insight with us, Ilya, and thank you for joining us. Now I'd like to invite Daniel Spadafora, who's the program framework developer, curriculum committee member, course developer, and instructor, and he is currently the vice president executive head of people and culture at Chorus Entertainment. Welcome, Daniel.
Thanks, Masher. Good to see everyone. My titles are always so long, so I always feel bad 'cause it goes on for so long. So we'll figure out a way to shorten it. But it's nice to see everyone. If I think about just my journey into people analytics, it's similar to Ilya's, but I did a bit of like a sharp right turn at some point. So I would say through the course of my career, I grew up really as an HR business partner and a little bit of management consulting. And only when I kind of took on a bit of a stretch role for myself to be the head of HR operations and technology, did I start to think about people analytics. And it's been such a career differentiator for me. And so I'm hoping we'll talk a little bit about what this certificate program can offer folks. And if folks are looking to be like me at some point, which would be at the CHRO of an organization or not, we could talk about how the certificate program can help you hopefully achieve some of your career aspirations. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Lovely, and we're really thrilled to have you, Daniel. So thank you for joining. So finally, I'd like to invite Majbeen Mithab, HR generalist at CI Financial and a graduate of the certificate, to talk a little bit about her experience and her journey through the certificate. Welcome, Majbeen.
Thank you, Mashur, and nice seeing everybody in the panel as well. To everybody else, hi, my name is Majbeen. I'm currently an HR generalist at CI Financial, and I recently completed my postgraduate certificate in people analytics while working full-time in HR. I started the program in fall 2024, and it took me about a year and a half to complete. Like many of you, one of the main reasons I decided to pursue the program was career development. I could start seeing how HR has become increasingly data-driven, and I wanted to strengthen my ability to use data and insights to support both people and business decisions. I was also looking for opportunities to continue to grow my career, and this program aligned perfectly with that goal. In fact, I'll soon be transitioning into a new role within my HR team where I'll also be working closely with reporting and analytics. So the timing has been absolutely perfect. What I really appreciated about the program was how practical it was. It helped me approach HR challenges through both people and a data lens, and I was able to apply many of the concepts directly to real workplace situations. And another major benefit was the flexibility. Since I was working full time, the online format made it much easier to balance work, school, and personal commitments. The workload was manageable, especially if you stay organized and have dedicated time during the week to finish the coursework. We also had weekly live discussion sessions, which was one of the highlights of the course. It gave us the opportunity to ask questions, discuss real workplace scenarios, and learn from our peers who came from a variety of industries and HR backgrounds. So those conversations really helped bring the course material to life and connect it to real world challenges. And I also had a great experience with the instructors, Daniel and Ilya. They were both incredibly knowledgeable and supportive, and they did a great job making the content approachable, even for students who didn't come from a strong analytics background. And then throughout the program, we completed a mix of group projects, individual assignments, and discussion forum activities. The group projects were especially valuable because they allowed us to collaborate, solve real HR problems, and learn from one another's experiences. And the individual assignments helped kind of reinforce the concepts and build confidence in working with the data independently. So overall, I found the program to be a great experience. It provided a strong foundation in people analytics and helped me develop skills that are becoming increasingly important in HR. And it also gave me much more confidence in working with data and reporting. So I'm really happy to be here, and I'm happy to share more about my experience and any questions you have today.
Amazing. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
sharing that with us, Mejabin. And yeah, looking forward to hearing more about your experience. That ends the presentation portion of today's session, and we will now open the floor to everyone for Q&A. Please go ahead and enter your questions by typing them into the question box of the control panel, and we'll get to them one by one. So it looks like we have a couple of questions that are in already. The first question is, what was the workload like for someone working full time? So I know, Majbin, you alluded to that just a little bit, but maybe you can start with that, and then if anybody else wants to chime in.
Yeah, like I said, like I was working full time while I was working on the program. I would say that definitely the workload is manageable, but consistency is important. I found that dedicating maybe a few evenings and staying ahead on assignments helped a lot. Yeah, they definitely needed some planning, but it was very doable, very valuable as well.
Awesome. Daniel, Ilya, would like to chime in on that.
I think, yeah, I think so. Benjamin, good to see you, and thank you for that. Thank you for that overview. And Ilya and I didn't pay her to do it, so she just that those are that's a genuine response. But what I would say is, Ilya and I also are working full time. And so for us, we put as much effort, if not more, than our learners to make sure that everyone understands the concepts that we're teaching. And we are more than flexible in terms of workload and understanding how people are learning in the session, whether or not to include additional items for learning or discussion or to scale back a little bit. So it is manageable. We want people to be successful, and so we will kind of work at everyone's pace so long it is reasonable. That's why this course was designed. It was designed for continuing learners, most likely that are still working full time.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, next question is, does the program deal with the real world scenarios and case studies?
Maybe I can take that one. I would say that the entire program is designed around practical, scenarios that, will happen and have happened in organizations, whether that's kind of more macro issues like, changes in the workforce or changes in the nature of work, whether that's, mergers and acquisitions, their impact on groups, whether it's cultural, talent acquisition related. Every module and every class is anchored on applying the people analytics to the the real world. There's very little that's kind of theoretical and kind of impossible or pie in the sky. So I would say the program has been designed specifically with that in mind. And that's been the case across all classes, whether it's statistics or whether it's the storytelling. It's all based on what professionals would encounter and can encounter in the real world.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, Daniel, go ahead.
No, I'm glad Ilya covered it. Nothing else to add on my end.
Oh, okay. You came off mic, so I thought you
Yeah.
had something to add. Anyone else? Majorine, did you have anything to add to that?
No, just to Ilya's point as well, like many of the projects involve solving realistic workplace challenges, so using the data which made it work more relevant and engaging for the class as well.
Amazing. Next question is, how is AI affecting people analytics and HR decision making today?
These are all great questions, especially a really good question, because I would say it is affecting people analytics the same way AI is probably affecting every other part of our life today, right? So you could easily take a data set and drop it into Claude, ChatGPT, or whatever your choice of AI agent seems to be. The reality is, and what we try to layer into the certificate program, is AI is not a replacement for your brain, right? And so if we think about what your brain should be doing, or what that frontal cortex part of your brain should be doing, is thinking about data in a very creative, logical way, right? And adding context from your business, context in whatever, however you're using analytics, context that AI necessarily wouldn't be able to understand. Right. And so if we think about like data mining, some data cleansing, etc. Yeah, AI can definitely help. It helps accelerate some of those things for you. It cannot necessarily give you a true impact on what some of these numbers are saying about where your business might be heading, about what your data set's actually trying to tell you, unless you know about the context in which the data was pulled. So it is a wonderful accelerator to get started when we think of people analytics, and it removes some of the administrative tasks when we think about dealing with data and analytics, but it doesn't actually take away or help you prep for the so what statements, which is what is the data telling you, right? And so I would say it's increasing the speed at which you can analyze data, but that just means with that extra time that you've been given back, you have to work harder at figuring out what are the so what statements, what hypothesis or bet or future trend are you trying to make out of the data that's in front of you, and how are you going to sell it to your audiences?
That's amazing. I love that answer. Anything else to add to that, Ilya? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's impossible to have a conversation about any field right now without mentioning AI, and there's definitely an impact. I would say that throughout the course we kind of cover AI as a tool that we can leverage as professionals to make us better, almost like an extension to our domain expertise and knowledge. But like Danielle said, it's not going to replace our need to better understand our stakeholders and our partners in the business. It's not going to help us build relationships that help negotiate and influence decisions, based on the data, and it's certainly not necessarily going to help us be convincing and influential in the way that we, tell these complex stories to audiences that may not be as technical as us. So I would say that, it's a great tool. It's something that we cover across the board, but it's not a replacement for the domain expertise that we built in this class or in the certificate.
Yeah, I think that's something that everybody is wondering, right? If they're gonna get replaced with that. But thanks for sharing that little bit of information. Okay, the next one is to all three. If you were starting your people analytics career today, what would you learn first? Who wants to take that?
I mean,
Maybe
that's an interesting
right?
and a very interesting question, right? Because it's I feel like our paths are also different, and we all sort of ended up in similar situations where we're leveraging people data to make decisions and support decision making organizationally. Um, I don't know that I necessarily would have done things differently. I think gaining the domain expertise in the field is important for people analytics to be more and more potent and powerful. Um, I think the technical aspects are changing all the time. So, I would probably not focus on only learning one thing, right? So if you're starting a career and you're saying, look, I'm going to make a bet and I'm just going to learn R, or I'm just going to learn Power BI, I probably wouldn't do that. I probably would focus on gaining a broader understanding of the things we analyze and the types of, problems and issues and individuals and types of groups we'll be dealing with in the space. Spend a lot of time there and then move into kind of the technical aspect of analytics. That's my general perspective.
Imagine maybe you go next, and then I'll take the sweep if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what I mean, it's not like I would do anything differently, but it would just going in and also being part of the course. It's just something I've learned. I think before going in, I thought people analytics would be very much about the reporting, the numbers, the data side of it. But I've also learned how the storytelling part is just so much more important. How you communicate the information to leaders, how the insights are shared for business decisions is just something I think it like going in to understand the importance of that, not just the reporting, not just the visualizations and the tools side of it.
Awesome. That's all. So I'm gonna answer this question two ways. One, I'm gonna answer this question because I see that the last part of this question was to get employed ASAP. So I'm gonna answer the question as if I was starting off in the workforce, like I did. I won't even say how many years ago, and then I'm gonna answer it as a CHRO today. When I started my career, I wanted to be an HR business partner. I wanted to I remember saying to people all the time, and I look back and I laugh. I was like, I just want to be with the people. I want to advise people on things, and I want to be the voice of talent. I still haven't met that person in full transparency. I don't know where that role exists. But my strategy was to just get my foot in the door. So when I actually started as an HR file clerk at Rogers. That role does not exist anymore, by the way. And I remember just any which way I could hear an employee conversation from the job that I was doing. I tried to get myself closer to it. So I would say if your goal is try to get employed ASAP, I'm not saying take any job because you have to be strategic and picky about the jobs that you want. But the job is your role is probably not going to be perfect. And so figure out which role, if it's not perfect, figure out which role might give you some glimpses into the mandate that you want. And then you kind of work as hard as possible to demonstrate that you can kind of get there. But it's really about kind of taking a chance on a role that might not be a perfect fit to start. And then if I think about how I assess talent for the organization at Chorus as a CHRO, I would say part of it is I never look for someone that is perfect on a candidate slate because that person doesn't exist. But for me, it's about, especially in an interview or getting to know someone, how do you navigate times of ambiguity? And Majabin can tell you a lot of our scenarios that we deal with throughout every course in this certificate program deals with a case study that is either purposely missing data or data is confusing. And a lot of the learners will come back and say, well, Daniel, this doesn't make sense. We're missing part of the data. I was like, that's right. That's on purpose. Which is, if you're missing part of that story, how do you navigate ambiguity to get there? Right? And this course is trying to teach you, yes, about numbers, yes, about people analytics and how you deal with it, but how do you build frameworks in the face of ambiguity that help you answer questions that you may not have all of the information for or about to make that decision. So I would say it's more about like ability to make decisions or create frameworks where they don't exist today. And if I were to think about what I would learn first, it would be that, which would be when I am faced with a problem that I don't know the answer to, how do I behave and what do I create to help me get the answer, rather than just raising my hand and say I don't have the answer, so I can't move forward.
I love that. I know I heard this saying once that, data will always not give you the answers, but it'll help you ask the right questions. So I think you definitely covered that in the course. So thank you for sharing, all three of you. Next question is, does the program cover predictive analytics use cases like flight risk modeling or workforce planning, or is it mostly descriptive or historical analysis?
So I'll cover this Ilya did a wonderful job talking about the courses they teach, 602 and 603, which is the second and third. And then I happen to teach 601, 604. So it's almost like a bit of a sandwich model that we have between the two of us. But in the first course, we do talk a lot about different types of data models, right? We talk about a descriptive or historical analysis model is a regression model. We talk about that because it's easy to understand, but we do talk a lot about predictive models and what that looks like. We talk about workforce planning and the difference between workforce planning and talent acquisition as a function in human resources, and how you use predictive analytics as a result in those scenarios. And we do talk about things like flight risk modeling, high potential turnover, et cetera. So we do cover all of those pieces. When you move into, so 601 is very much so foundational. When you move into the other courses that are more technical, the ones that Ilya teaches, like 602 and 603, there is some different model coverage that we get into. However, we don't go super, super deep because there are varying levels of learners in those in each of the courses, but we do touch on them.
Yeah, I would say like just to add to Daniel's comment, we touch on, we talk a lot about decisions that, or data that will affect decisions in the future, program design, predictive or leading indicators to certain things that might happen, like flight risk. But then we get quite technical from the perspective of like survival models and time to event models, like, where you can kind of try and understand your workforce and some of the trends, especially when it comes to workforce planning and forecasting. Like when do you need to hire? Like when do you need to make certain decisions in order to make sure that your people aren't burning out, for instance, right? So we talk about some of those models to throughout the classes. So there's definitely more of a focus than the focus is across the board, right? It's the descriptive stuff, the historical, it's the forecastive or predictive stuff, and then we also talk about personalization, right? So the personalized insights and personalized data that might exist in the future to help us make decisions as individuals, give our audiences, whether that's employees, managers, leaders, executives, and so on, the ability to make decisions, and what kind of data exists to support those kinds of decisions for them in the various technologies that they'll be using on a day-to-day basis.
Love that. Thanks to the both of you for that. Okay, moving on to the next one. How current is the curriculum with today's HR tech stack, given how fast HRIS and analytics tools are evolving?
So I would say our curriculum, having been in HR technology, analytics, and ops for a big chunk of my career, I would say I don't think they move that fast when you're in it. They're actually a little bit slower than other technology arenas, but we are platform agnostic. So throughout the certificate program, you are going to hear about us mentioning different HRS platforms or analytic solutions, but we talk about how you assess them and how you navigate them in terms of what platforms could be best and for what scenarios. But we don't actually pick a platform and then do a deep dive on the functionality of that platform. We talk about how you think about them, and that's far more valuable because as you go on in your career, you likely, even if you're with the same employer for your entire career, your HR technology platforms will shift, they will change, they will be exchanged, they'll be decommissioned, they'll be launched, deployed, what have you, and they'll be different. So thinking about the mindset you have to have or the framework you need to have when you're assessing HRIS tools is what we focus on, and that'll be more valuable for you in your career going forward.
If I can just add to that as well, I would say, our discussions and our courses and the curriculum is also influenced by the things that we do and in our day-to-day, we're practitioners in our lives too. So, it's going to be influenced by things you see happening. And, I talk about case scenarios all the time where, let's say we're implementing a new sentiment analysis tool that's attached to our, survey or engagement survey platform, right? And some of the implications associated with that when dealing with, when dealing with language and when dealing with ethics and regulations and things like that, right? When we talk about AI, we talk about some of the legislation that's being introduced. We talk about some of the impacts of, some of the stuff that's happening, whether that's LLM development or updates to, us as practitioners who are having to deal with, let's say, in talent acquisition, seeing candidates adopting these tools as part of interviews and, how to deal with that as a potential for screening and for assessment, right? So I would say the stack is less important than the evolution of the work that we do and how these technological advancements are potentially affecting us as practitioners and the audiences that we work with, managers, executives, and so on, employees engaging with technology.
Both really great answers from both Daniel and Ilya. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so moving on, we've got one more question is if you don't have hands-on experience in the field, how can you present case studies or project work in a way that feels credible and meaningful to employers?
So I'll answer, and then Elia and Mejabin can talk about their experience as well, both as an instructor and then a student who's gone through it. But I think that this program, whether you have hands-on experience in the field or not, we teach you actually how to present and actually how to think about data and case studies quite effectively. People in my career often make fun of me, hopefully jovially, that I love to present and I love a good PowerPoint presentation and data set. That is very true, actually. And that's usually what comes across in some of our curriculum, which is we will give case studies, but part of our assessments and assignments throughout this course will be how do you present these case studies going forward? And we usually in class or in session have a lot of like practice sessions with group breakouts where you can practice with your peers before you actually have to do a presentation or submit an assignment. But I'll hand it over to Ilya and then Mejabin if they have anything else to add.
I'm just fresh off of this, so I think we had our last class a couple of weeks ago for the last semester here, and I got to see some wonderful presentations to conclude the data management and visualization classes, and those are artifacts that students can take wherever they go, right? They are not theoretical, they're not academic in nature. They are things that you would expect to see or could see in a boardroom. You could see them in a program launch. You could see them in a kickoff. You could see them in a kind of a consulting engagement. These are real artifacts that somebody could take into the workforce or into their interviews and say, hey, look, I've created these things, and they're real. They're as real as it gets. And imagine, maybe I'll pass it on to you because you've been through some of these classes and you've done some of these
Yeah.
presentations.
No, for sure. I was going to say the same. Like, yeah, it was technical enough to say develop new skills, but it was always tied back to practical HR applications. Like, I don't think the goal was to turn us into data scientists. And I think the focus was on helping HR professionals like understand data, identify trends, build meaningful reports, and be able to confidently discuss workforce insights with teams. I thought it was a great balance between technical knowledge and business application.
Amazing. No, thank you. Thank you all for sharing that. And I think that is the last question we have right now. No more open questions. But before we wrap up, any last comments our panel here? And Daniel, Ilya?
Feel like I say this all the
Sure.
time, but
Yeah.
I wish this
Yeah.
existed. I wish this program existed when Daniel and I were going through like kind of the earlier stages of our career because we had to learn this from kind of practice and maybe at least for me lots of mistakes and you learn as you go. Um, I encourage everybody that's in this field, whether you're in the technical side of HR or technical side of data, that I think this will sharpen your toolkit. I think this will give you skills that you may not have had before, or give you an opportunity to practice skills that just get them better. I
Yeah.
wish this existed when I was coming up.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the exact same thing. I really have nothing else to add. I think the benefit also of these programs is your peer network that you walk away with, and I think Majabin can hopefully attest to that as well. You
Absolutely.
meet some really wonderful people, and what's great about after you leave, whether the certificate program overall or just an individual course, is you have a new network connection that went through it with you, and when you're facing a problem at work, guess who you can call? That person, because you would have gone through some of these things together. So I think that's really great.
Yeah, no, for me as well, like just beyond the credential itself, like the biggest value was the way how it changed the way I think about HR. I think it helped me become more comfortable with data, ask better questions, connect a lot of the workforce insights to see how it can impact the business. So I think those skills are also increasingly important among HR professionals. So that's definitely a huge takeaway.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing all of your insights, your experience, and thank you to everyone attending today. You've taken the first step in your interest in the certificate, and I just want to do one last poll with you all before we go into our closing remarks, and if you could just answer how we did, right? And how likely are you to take a course from the certificate? But I want to actually take this moment to once again thank our presenters, our panelists, everybody that tuned in during lunch period to join this info session. And let you know if you're interested in learning more about the certificate, please visit our website at continuing.torontomu.ca. If you have any other questions, you can contact me directly at masroor.chaudhry@torontomu.ca. The contact information and a recording of this session will be sent to you via email within the next 24 to 48 hours. And on behalf of the Chang School and all of our presenters and panelists, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of the day.